Here we go. So we're starting here with unit 8. So this is the second part of our cells one. So unit 7, what we really do is we focused on what a cell is, what's all involved with it, what does each part of it do, right? Your heart has a role, your skin has a role, your lungs have a role. The same things exist in cells. The next thing here that we're going to focus on is energy. How do organisms, not cells, but organisms get energy? This will eventually go into our cells, but this is focused on the creature. How do we get energy as people? How do we get energy? Food, water, sleep, right? But the big one there is food, right? So we get our energy through food. Now, obviously, we need the other things to live, and your body needs those to function, but we get ours through straight up calories. That's how it works, right? So we eat things. Is there anything that's alive that doesn't eat things, but it still gets energy? Plants are the really big one there, of course. So this is kind of where we're focused on. So there are two different types of ways you can get energy. One is you make your own. Plants make their own energy. What do they need to make their own energy? The sun and water. But so they can get their own energy through sunlight. We have to consume other things. We need calories. We need to eat something. So those are the only two ways that you can really get energy, and that's what we're going to go to. Now, energy has more purposes, though. So when you think of energy, like what are some examples that come to mind?
Power.
A lot of people think, yeah, power or electricity. We've already talked about food and calories. Is there any other examples of energy?
Sun.
So the sun, maybe you're thinking like, well, go plants is too. But are you thinking like solar energy?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Anything else? If you want to, I made craft dinner yesterday, so I'm going to go with that example. With craft dinner, when you want to make it, what's like the first step you do? Make a macaroni and cheese.
Boil the water.
Boil the water, right? How do you boil it?
Heat.
Heat. So these are some really common examples of when we think energy, right? Power, food, the sun, or electricity. Some people think like the plants, the photosynthesis. Usually heat, burning stuff, explosions. All of those things are ways that you can kind of produce energy or a really big force of energy. My other thing here is, what are some examples of energy conversion? What is energy? Like energy conversion, we know is trying to save energy, reduce our use of it.
Resting.
Sorry?
Resting.
So maybe resting. When it's really windy out, when it's winter outside, what are some things that sometimes like kind of form on your window? Starts with an F. Frost, right? So specifically, energy conversion is you're getting cold air. So much cold air is leaking through your cold window that it's starting to freeze the air inside your house around it, right? So what might be a way you can prevent that? All of our homes are built with it in Canada. Well, you can heat it, but also insulation. You can insulate your house. You can insulate the windows. Sometimes you put like plastic wrap over the window, right? And you heat it with a hairdryer. That could be it. Our houses all have insulation in them. That way you don't have to heat your house as much. So, these could be some good examples here of energy conservation. And as you said, resting's a really big one. So this is kind of where we're going with today. So our main focus here is energy. And so these are our three primary goals here today. Is we want to learn is, first off, there's some thermodynamics. There are some laws that exhibit here. Just like there's a law of gravity, there are laws of thermodynamics. It's physics. It just exists. We will look into those. We're also going to be looking at these two things, anabolic pathways and catabolic pathways. What are those and what is the difference between them? We're also going to look at, again, we have organisms that eat things and organisms that make their own energy. We're going to look at the difference between those two. And then we're going to learn about something called ATP and how that is vital to work in a cell, specifically for energy. Your cells make energy, your cells use energy. So that's where we're starting to get into. So we're going to start off here. It's going to be section 8.1. So I'll give you guys some time for that one there. Oh, I forgot to put some stuff here. We're just starting off here. We're doing just a section. We're doing chapter 8. We're doing point 1 there. Oh, I gotta unlock something here on the LMS. Here we go. So as we talked to, oh, it's not. There we go. So as we talked about earlier, we're looking at how organisms use energy, not just cells. But of course, that's going to be in. So we've looked at what energy is, its heat, its power, its calories, stuff like that. We're going to learn about energy retention. And then these are our 3 primary goals. So kind of starting out here. So we know that energy is the ability to do work. So we're going to end up looking at what thermodynamics is, which is how it works. Now, the big thing here, though, are 2 laws. So we have 2 laws, and these are important to know. The first is energy can be converted from one form to another, but you can't create it, I can't destroy it. The energy that plants use to grow, that comes from the sun. That's still sun energy, it's converting that. So you can't create it, you can't destroy it. If I eat an animal, the energy in that, in that animal, in that chicken breast or whatever I ate, all I've done is I've converted that. You can't you can't create it, you can't destroy it. You can only convert it. Even when we say plants make their own energy, they're technically converting the sun's energy. The other one is that energy can't be converted without the loss of usable energy. So we call that entropy. If you're a really big space nerd, you've seen that. But basically, in order to convert energy, it's not going to be perfectly efficient. There's a small change. So we've also talked about the difference between different organisms. Some can make that energy, some have to eat to get it. So we have different labels for what those are called. And so there's a nice little picture there that kind of fully sums it up here. So what we have is we have something called autotrophs and we have something called heterotrophs. So if you're looking at the first key words here, auto, automatic. And then hetero means like different. So basically, directly or indirectly, all the energy comes from the sun. On Earth, if you get rid of the sun, life dies. That's how many mass extinctions have happened, right? There's a giant volcano that spews ash in the air. It creates a really short ice age. Most life on the planet dies. We've seen this 6 times in the fossil record. So we have autotrophs that make their food from the sun or from inorganic substances. The most common one there, of course, is, people think plants. The other one, heterotrophs, they eat other things to get their energy, whether that's eating plants or eating animals. So again, we have the sun gives energy to an autotroph, and then we have a heterotroph that is eating that leaf, right? Think about a bug eating the leaf. Again, think auto, it's automatically making its own energy. So again, you think about an example of plants, for heterotrophs, humans, animals, moths. I don't think we need to go that deep into it. I think we know what the difference between these two are. One eats for food, one makes their own food. So not too complicated there. So we have 5 primary questions here. So first off, we're going to be looking at what is energy. We're going to be looking at, can energy be converted? We've already done those 2. We know what energy is now. We know that you can't convert energy. That's one of our laws. So now we want to list some energy forms. So we have thermal, heat. We have mechanical, that's movement. We have elastic. Has anyone ever taken like a rubber band and stretch it out a whole bunch of times and it can actually get hot? Same thing with a paper clip. That's not necessarily elastic, but if you take a paper clip, you can bend it fast enough. It can get hot, actually. It'll actually burn your finger if you do it enough, for example. We have chemical. If I mix the ingredients to make a bomb, I have released a whole bunch of energy. And then I, of course, have light, the sun. So those are all examples of different forms of energy. These are our 5 questions and these are our 5 answers. Okay, none of this is groundbreaking. The only one that tends to be a little more like troublesome is what are the 5 forms of energy? Those are the 5 forms. So, when we look at a chemical reaction, we are looking at metabolism. So basically, the fancy metabolism is a fancy way of it's a chemical reactions, and we end up making something called a metabolic pathway. So we have 2 of them. So there's 2 ways that metabolism works. We humans are the first one. We're catabolic. We use catabolic pathways. So we release energy by breaking down larger molecules. So when I eat a bag of chips, a chicken breast, a vegetable, I break down the elements within that and I turn that into energy. The other one is anabolic pathways. We use energy from these to build the larger molecules. So if I'm a big weightlifter and I'm trying to get jacked, I need to eat lots of protein and carbs to fuel my body. And then if I want to build that muscle, it's using those elements. So your body undergoes both of these. Okay, so again, the really key part here is difference between a catabolic pathway and an anabolic pathway and how they work. Again, so catabolic, you are breaking it down. You're getting energy by breaking it down. When I eat a thing of ice cream, it's turning that into glucose, pure sugar for my body to use. Whereas if I'm building something, I'm building a muscle or an amino acid, I use those basic building blocks. Think of it like Lego. So with metabolism, there's two ways. One is photosynthesis. I don't think we need a whole lot of like understanding of what is photosynthesis. Most people have a pretty good concept as to what that is. You convert the sun energy into chemical energy is the key word here. The key thing you want to know here is it's chemical energy. I don't think you need much note about like that it converts sun to energy. The other one here is cellular respiration. Your cells actually kind of breathe and they use this energy. So basically, cellular respiration is when you're using those catabolic pathways. Remember catabolic, release it by breaking down larger molecules to release energy for the cell. So photosynthesis, you're using the sun's energy. Cellular respiration, you're breaking down materials to use as energy. None of that's overly complicated. It's just putting it into words. So what do plants produce? Does anyone know? Like what do plants kind of give off to the world while they make energy? Oxygen. Yeah, they make oxygen. So that's kind of what this picture is here, right? So the sun goes down on autotrophs, plants, and what they release is they release two things. One, glucose, this is sugar, and two, oxygen. What then ends up happening is we humans get that stuff, we take this stuff and we will use cellular respiration, right? We'll process it. We need the oxygen to live and we need the glucose as energy. And then this is what we release. We release carbon dioxide and we release H2O, water, which then the plants use, right? So the plants use CO2, they use water, they give off sugars, and they give off oxygen, which we use. So it's kind of a big cycle there. We rely on each other. So the other one here is ATP, and this is the battery of the cell. So ATP is really, really important, and it's a vital ingredient for chemical energy. So this is where it gets really complicated. This is some of the most complicated stuff we're really going to go to. There's a bit of chemistry involved. So we store our energy, living things, chemical energy is in biological molecules. Carbs, proteins, fats, and other things. So ATP is the fancy word for adenosine triphosphate. You do not need to know what adenosine triphosphate is. You just need to know that that's ATP, right? A, T, and P. It's the most important thing, and it's what provides that for us. Oh, that's good attendance. Okay, so what is ATP? What the heck is this? You're looking at this and it's like, what does all this mean? We're gonna make some sense of it. So basically, it's don't really need to know that. It's made of these three things. Don't really need to know that. Don't really need to know that. Let's start breaking it down. So how does it work? It's like a car battery, is what I recommend, or just a car battery. It's just a battery. So ATP works like a battery. We know that batteries store energy and use them when needed. So basically, what batteries do is they convert stored chemical energy into mechanical energy. If I put a battery in an RC car, it can turn that stuff. This does the exact same thing. So how it works is it releases energy when the bond between the second and the third phosphate group, this thing, gets broken. So those things are grouped together. When that thing rips apart from the other two, when this phosphate molecule rips apart from the other two, that's how that energy gets released. So this turns this molecule into something called ADP. Adenosine diphosphate. Again, not that important to know. If you know it's ADP, that's fine. And that also gives it a free phosphate group. So basically, if we take ATP, we add some water to it, and we rip apart that phosphate, it's going to convert that into energy. And we're left over with the other stuff here. So that's the really big part. And I know that's complicated. It's a bit of chemistry here. Optimize for video. Okay, so I'm just gonna put. I like this animation. I don't use a lot of these, but I like this animation.
You have probably heard an athlete say that they need more energy before a game. But did you think of how that energy, which was in their food, was broken down and transferred to give that athlete energy? Energy exists in many forms. All organisms need energy to sustain life. In living organisms, chemical energy is stored in biological molecules and can be converted to other types of energy. In this example, we will go over ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. This is the most important biological molecule that provides energy to organisms. ATP stores chemical energy that can be used by cells. ATP is a nucleotide of an adenosine base, a ribose sugar, and 3 phosphate groups. ATP releases energy when a phosphate bond is broken, forming ADP, or adenosine diphosphate, and a free phosphate group. There is energy stored in the phosphate bond, which forms when ADP receives a phosphate group and becomes ATP. Wow! Who knew that cells were so involved in helping people obtain and sustain energy?
Okay, so one thing to kind of note here is, again, this is constructed from from the food we eat. It's broken down, it's constructed into this, and then we break it apart. Does anyone know like what type of, if you, let's say you're going to run a marathon tomorrow, what should you probably have for supper tonight? You want to have what's called like complex carbohydrates. So like a simple carbohydrate, a simple sugar. If I drink a thing of pop, the sugar's already like it's pretty processed. It's broken down just to straight like glucose or sucrose. But if I were to eat like a potato or some whole wheat pasta or whole grain rice, that takes my longer body to convert. It has more of this ATP available for me when I'm going to about to go run, for example. So we're going to start going over these quick questions here. Where's my go? So like I said, we had 3 questions. So, or sorry, we have 4 questions. So I'm going to give you guys a minute here. You only need, I'm going to say you only need like 2 lines for each one. You don't need a lot. No, you don't need a lot of space here. So as we're going through it, oops. So what's the major source of all energy for living things? Or the major source of energy for all living things? The sun. There are organisms that don't need the sun, specifically some in like the deep ocean. There's some that survive by like volcanic, not volcanoes, but volcanic vents, thermal vents. So our next question here is what's an example of the first law of thermodynamics? And if you remember, our first law of thermodynamics is energy can be converted from one form to another. You can't make it, you can't destroy it. Can anyone think of one? One example here is, well, what happens if I store energy in food? If we eat food, we store the energy in that food, gets converted to chemical energy for us. And then we then turn that to mechanical energy. This is the fancy way of saying, if I eat a steak the night before, I can then go run the next day, right? I digest it, I go for a run, I move. My heart beats with that energy. Um, so what's the difference between anabolic and catabolic pathways? So what if we take out the names? There's two pathways. How do they both work? Don't worry about like trying to get the right one.
One, um, one takes a molecule from a different organism, turns it to Gs.
So you're thinking autotrophs or heterotrophs, but you're kind of similar. So one of these breaks down molecules, the other one builds molecules. Most people, what they struggle with is remembering which one does what. And so what I recommend you do is you see the C, think about crush. The C stands for crushing something. So when you have a catabolic pathway, you are breaking down large molecules into smaller ones. So this is me, I ate that steak, I'm now going to start converting that into calories and energy and proteins, stuff like that. So if you think C stands for crush, you'll know that, oh, this is the one that breaks it down, right? Which means that anabolic has to be the one that builds the larger molecules from small ones. So maybe this is me building my muscle. I eat a steak, my catabolic pathways crush it down into the basic proteins and amino acids, and then my anabolic pathways build that into muscle. Again, think about crush, that'll get you there. Then the last one is, how does ATP store and then how does it release energy? Very complicated question, right? Well, we form ATM from ADP. Energy is stored in those phosphate bonds. If you remember, there was those three triangles, right? Those are your three phosphate bonds. So we're going to break one of these off. Oops. So this ATP stuff, pretty complicated, right? So that usually tends to be one of the harder things most people kind of struggle to get because it's actually it's chemistry, right? So like we're at the point now where we're starting to mix in different subjects as well. Okay, and so that's it for today. So tomorrow we'll continue on going through here. So what you guys can do today to finish up is again, I recommend we keep getting a whole bunch of new stuff. I recommend flashcards. And then give yourself a test. These types of questions start to be really good as well. It's not just about the vocabulary, it's about trying out some of those hard questions, which is like, how does ATP work? What's the difference between anabolic and catabolic pathways? So I'm going to give you guys some more time for that. Those cards those cards are still there. You're welcome to use a pen or Sharpie or anything. I promise you this is going to save you a lot of time and energy later. Oh, thank you. And then everything should be marked here within the next day or two. I did some during the weekend, so we should be up to date there soon. Oh, yes.